Welcome to the Dojo, the podcast where we turn marketing news into marketing tasks. This week you have me as your presenter, as Dale could not be with us this week, but they should be back next week. But this week we'll still be hearing 3 stories, including one from our special guest today. We'll pick the best one and then turn it into marketing tasks that you can do today. So I'm Jess Percival. I am a digital marketing specialist at Exposure Ninja, and as always, I am joined by Tim Cameron Kitchen, who is the founder of Exposure Ninja, and our special guest today, Danielle Nicholls, who is a content creator and social media editor at Alton Towers Resort. Welcome to the Dojo, Danielle.
Thanks, so exciting.
Yeah, it's really nice to have you here. It'd be really great if you could just tell our audience what your relationship to marketing is.
Yeah, so I'm actually a little bit of an oddball, I'm not going to lie, where I knew I wanted to work in marketing when I was about 14, which is like the strangest thing ever. But basically, growing up, I was a massive dancer. So I did like ballet, tap, modern jazz, all these kind of things. And I found myself in a scheme, which sounds really weird, called the Lowry Dance Ambassador Scheme in Manchester. And we were tasked with trying to encourage the younger demographic to come and watch ballet and dance in the theatre. And we had some like keynote speeches from like directors of marketing from like the Royal Ballet and like other massive companies like that. And I was listening to what they were saying, and I was like, oh, do you know what? That's what I want to do. So I've pretty much known since like my GCSEs, did my A levels, went to uni, did a media and marketing degree, so a bit of content creation and a bit of like traditional marketing. And then from there, I knew I wanted to work in leisure. It was like my thing. So I went to Super Break and Late Rooms, which was like a tour operator. Did some amazing things. Like we chartered a plane to Iceland. But then we also sold like theatre and theme parks, that kind of thing as well. So that was a lot of fun. I was there for about a year. And then I went to another theme park in Staffordshire, Drayton Manor, and was there for, God, I think it was about 6 years coming up to it was I was there in a variety of different roles. So I started in like a generic marketing role, covering a bit of 360, a bit of everything, and then started to specialise more in the digital side of things. And then eventually found my footing with social and decided this is what I want to do, this is where I want to go. Now I'm at Alton in a social specific role, and I've been here nearly 5 months now. So yeah, it's very exciting.
That is a really awesome story, Danielle, and I think it's a really great path for people who may be young marketers who are listening, or people who aren't sure which area they want to specialize in. I think that's a really fantastic story to be like, you tried out all these different things, you kind of knew the industry you wanted to work in, you tried out all these different things, then you were like, social is for me. Absolutely love that. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, that's really, really cool. Love that. I'm going to dive straight into asking everyone their headlines, starting with Tim. What is your headline for this week?
In AI Corner this week, just wanted to give an update on Google's AI overviews based on some study data.
Interesting. We always love a bit of AI Corner. Danielle, what's your heading for this week?
I'm chatting through boosting brand awareness by using social communities and how we
Very good. Feel like that would be really, really cool. Feel like that's relevant to a lot of our audience. And my headline for this week is Decathlon's No Tent Left Behind campaign. Tim, I think we will go ahead and start with you, since I think people are always chomping at the bit to get AI news on this podcast. So go ahead, share your exciting, or maybe less exciting, AI overviews updates.
Well, if they're chomping at the bit, it'd be a shame to disappoint them, wouldn't it? So for those who don't know, AI overviews are Google's sort of generative AI bits that they put at the top of search results. And they were playing with this for about a year before properly releasing it in May in the US. And when they released it, there was a lot of attention on some of the answers that they were getting. They kind of went viral for the wrong reasons. Lots of people getting really strange, unusual answers, and lots of backlash against these AI overviews in general. One of the SEO tools, SE Ranking, has been doing a bit of, surveying and studying how the number of AI overviews in search results has been changing over time. And they published a report in the last week, which gave us some data. So When just before AI overviews were ready to launch, when they were still SGE and they were still in testing mode, about 64% of searches were triggering an AI overview. Well, fast forward, I guess, a couple of months now, and that percentage is down at 8.71%. So less than 1 in 10 searches are showing an AI overview. In some verticals, this percentage is higher. So in relationships, for example, 26%, food and beverage, 25%, tech, 18%. In some verticals, that percentage is actually lower, though. So in travel, healthcare, legal, news, and politics, all of these are sub 1%. And I think particularly travel is really interesting because Google often demos this sort of functionality using travel cases, and loads of the initial keywords and the initial searches that they demoed SGE with originally was all about travel planning and trip planning. Well, those have almost entirely disappeared now. Yeah, and then more data they found. So for longer queries, so queries over 10 words long, which isn't usually how people use Google, but that was 19% of AI overviews. So I guess this speaks to Google using AI overviews as a way of giving searchers better and more tailored information when there wouldn't necessarily be any published content that specifically addresses that long search, because nobody makes a page on their blog about, whatever, where to go if you want to see this, and you're bringing 3 children with you and you've got a dog. Like, no one makes a page called that. So AI overviews in that type of situation might work well because they could aggregate information from lots of different sources. Another thing which caught my eye, 15% of the time, none of the AI overviews links are in the top 10. So that's the sort of the opportunity for businesses that aren't ranking well in Google already. They've got 15% of those queries, if they're not ranking, that they can try and pick up some visibility in AI overviews. But I think the overall picture here is that Google has definitely wound AI overviews back a little bit, which I don't think any of us are surprised at, given the backlash, really, once they were published. My take on all of this, if you're using Search Labs, if you're in Google's testing mode, you'll still see AI overviews a lot of the time. So in Search Labs, they're still there for, I don't know, it feels closer to the 64% of searches that they were pre-launch. And my guess is that Google is regrouping and is going to come back with AI overviews once they've been tested a bit more thoroughly. I think the fact that we're seeing much higher instances of AI overviews in certain verticals probably shows that Google has been working on those specific verticals to get them right, and then we'll start to see more verticals with higher percentages in the future. The reason that Google has been doing this, of course, is in response to the threat from search engines like Perplexity, which is generative AI and search combined, and of course the persistent rumors that OpenAI is working on a search product as well. So Google sort of has to do something along those lines to have a sort of defense against these threats. And that threat has not gone away. So I think Google's still backed into a corner and will have to roll out something like this, and will have to keep pushing it out to users. They just basically need to get it right. Otherwise, the danger, of course, is that Perplexity increases in market share, OpenAI brings out something cool with web search, and all of a sudden Google looks like the old-fashioned product. So they need a horse in this race. It just remains to be seen exactly how popular it is with users and how hard they push it. All of these generative AI search tools, they basically have exactly the same process. They use the same sort of technology, I guess, under the hood. And the way that you optimize for them is exactly the same. So despite Google rolling these back slightly, I think as marketers, we all still need to be aware of this. We need to be optimizing for AI overviews, which will also give us visibility in Microsoft Copilot, which will also give us visibility on Perplexity searches as well. But as of right now, AI overviews has not set the world on fire. So, I mean, Jess, you've been watching this since the start. Are you surprised by Google rolling this back?
No, I'm not, but I'm really surprised that it got to this point in the first place. Like, I don't know if it is just one of those where they were fretting because Bing had released theirs and Bing's already dealt with all these issues and it's just kind of part of the platform now. So Google's like, oh, we need to do ours, but it's not finished and we'll just do it. And now I feel like they're like having to retcon it. And I think I think I said this to you earlier, Tim. I think that people's trust in AI, like the general public's trust in AI, is so low. Like, I think people just don't like it at all. Like, I really feel like they're just not, like, anytime I see the average person talking about AI on social media, they're completely ripping it to shreds. I just think that they don't like it. I don't know, Danielle, I feel like you might have encountered some people who maybe are not a fan of this, or it'd be great to know how
Yeah.
AI is looking
I
at the
think
social media
specifically
world.
on social, you
Yeah.
see, you see so many people on social just not happy about it at all. I think in particular, when AI generates images, I think that causes such an uproar. If you look at the Charlie and the Chocolate Willy Wonka experience thing, like that was just mental. But then also you see some brands using it for all sorts of different stuff, and people are quick to spot it and point it out and almost rage about it and be like, "You've used AI, you're taking." And I think sometimes AI is an assistance. No one's using it. I hope anyway, other than the Willy Wonka guys, as like the be all and end all. People are using it to guide, to assist, or as a starting block. But yeah, people are quick to jump on it and accuse brands in particular.
Oh yeah, I've definitely seen, especially now that Instagram is flagging people's content as AI generated when it's not. I can imagine some of the imagery that you use, like you have quite an impressive image behind you that is obviously manipulated, but it's not
Yeah,
it's not AI. It's everything about it is crafted in a certain
exactly.
way, the same that I can imagine a lot of your imagery is that you work with. But I can imagine that you're going to start falling into this trap where people are thinking it's AI, or Meta is flagging it as AI, which I'm sure
Yeah.
is going to be quite frustrating.
I actually had a situation not long ago where I did a voiceover on TikTok. And because I'd added like one of those filters over the top of it, just, for the lols, it flagged it as AI generated. And I was like, it's not like I've put time and effort into creating this content, but I just put a silly little filter over my voice. So suddenly it was AI. So
Yeah, yeah, it's completely wild. Tim, kind of focusing back on this specific AI overviews update, what would you say to marketers who are feeling pulled back and forth, like, oh, we need to be optimizing for AI, oh, Google's pulling it back, oh, maybe they're going to release it, oh, maybe we need to be optimizing for Perplexity? Like, I can imagine there's marketers who just maybe just don't want to do any of it because they just don't know where to start. Like, what would you say to them?
Yeah, and I think there are a lot of people that are sort of secretly quite glad that this thing isn't rolling out at the scale that it was looking like it was going to, because it means they actually don't have to change anything. I think that that's a little bit risky. I think similar to our advice when it was just SGE, really. I think as long as you know how to get your website content ranking in AI overviews in labs mode, that gives you the reassurance that if Google starts rolling this out in your country for your searches, that you can optimize for it. But if Google doesn't, then you don't want to be re-optimizing your entire website for this thing that may or may not come to you, and it may not impact you at all. So I think it's just about being prepared, testing it, playing with it, making sure you understand how it works. And then, if that time comes, you're going to be ready. Last thing you want is that there are still plenty of searches where the websites that are ranking prominently. I've been doing some studying for a webinar that I'm giving about corporate comms this week. So looking at how companies like Unilever and Coca-Cola and large multinational brands, how they use AI overviews. And for so many of those searches, they're ranking really well in the organic results. They've got feature snippets and all that, but they're just nowhere to be seen in the AI overviews. So I think in those types of situations, you absolutely need to have a handle on how this thing works and how you get in those answers. Otherwise, that entire conversation happens without any of your brand's input whatsoever. That whole answer could be talking about your brand without featuring your brand as a source of any of that info. So I think it's just about like keeping your eyes open and don't ignore this. Don't just hope it goes away. You've got to play with it and almost prepare as if it is coming for you. And then if it doesn't, hey, you're good.
Fab. Thank you so much, Tim. I think being real about this stuff is so important. I definitely know there's a lot of marketers who are like, you have to go all in or you don't. So I really appreciate you being very like upfront about what this actually means for marketers. Very, very helpful. Let's head over onto Danielle's story about boosting brand awareness with social communities, because I think a lot of the brands that you're going to talk about today are B2B, but I just want to B2C even. I just want to reassure people this can work for B2B communities too, like definitely.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'd be fantastic to hear a bit more about your story, Danielle.
Yeah, so I wanted to chat through using community management to boost brand awareness and boost brand reputation as well. So we've seen so many different brands, like Jess says, mainly B2C, but B2B have great success too, in doing this. So essentially, when a brand posts a piece of social content, they're in the comments, they're responding to people in a very reactive way, but they're also being proactive in responding to other brands' content, other creators' content, influencer content, but then also just general fans of their product, and almost searching and doing a lot of social listening to see what people are saying about their brand and getting involved in the conversation. So if we delve into some specific brands that are doing this really, really well, I think Ryanair come front of mind. They're incredible at it. They're actually very cheeky with their tone of voice. So you'll see on X, they're very often replying to guest complaints about things in a very sassy way, which I find quite amusing. I think it's an interesting choice, and I think it wouldn't necessarily work for all brands, but the way they do it is incredible, and I think it's so funny because you can just imagine like their social team having so much fun with it. They do it on TikTok as well, like they'll respond to people's comments, or like, I paid for a window seat and I didn't get one, and then they'll like go through the guest journey on the website and be like, at what point did you think this was a window seat? Like, it's very evidently not. And they'll like completely pick them out and be like, nah, like you're talking a lot of rubbish, that is not true. Which I find quite amusing. But they do see really great engagement off the back of it. If you think about sentiment, it's whether that's positive or negative. I think they see a shift in more positive sentiment, but it's an interesting one. But then, yeah, there's other places that are doing it really well. Duolingo, again, another brand that comes front of mind when you think of social content. They're responding to people. And I think something that's really great, and something that we see specifically here at Alton as well, and across Merlin generally, when you're in the comments, you're responding to people, you're using social commentary to fuel your social content almost, you see your engagement rates skyrocket and be incredible and be up year on year, month on month. Like, no matter what you see, so long as you're invested in that community management, you'll always see an increase in engagement rate. It does sometimes affect reach as well, but the primary KPI that it does increase is engagement rate. And I think something that I try and do as a bit of a takeaway is, every time, this is more specific to TikTok, but can be implemented across channel too, when we put content out there, within the first 15-20 minutes, I'm in the comments replying to people as often as I can, as quickly as I can, and you see a real boost in, to be fair, for this instance, reach and engagement straight off the bat. And when I've done a bit of an A/B test and not undertaken that and just left it to be and see what happens with it, you do actually see less people engaging with the content, and you see the reach much lower. And especially in the industry, like the leisure industry, tourism industry, when you're posting about things, so many people have got questions about your product. When you're open, what rides are open? How much is it? Where is this? Like, there's so many questions. And if you just leave them unanswered, this magical algorithm that exists somewhere in the world seems to just think, oh, no one's interested in that, so we'll push that away, and then they don't tend to promote it. But if you're in the comments replying to both guest queries and any other like more fun commentary, and this is probably more specific to B2C, but you can implement it B2B as well, that suddenly helps your engagement, community, everything skyrocket. And it gives them a sense of belonging as well. So another really great tool that can be used is community groups. So you see brands using these primarily on Facebook, but you can implement them in terms of like Instagram channels, which is a fairly new feature that you see influencers and content creators using as well. But the ones on Facebook are much more interactive, and you can kind of respond to people, and they can chat to you as well. It's more of like a two-way conversation. But a really great example is Thought Park, a theme park within the Merlin Group. They've got a pass holder group, and so there are so many questions in there, so many like, we really want to see this, we want to see that, and they're almost constantly, I think it's like, it's a bit of a machine, I'm not going to lie, constantly responding to people, and making them feel like they have a sense of belonging in that fan group, because very specifically theme park enthusiasts, and I think any group of people that have a passion about something, a product, an interest, they want to know every little detail. They want to know behind the scenes. They want to really delve into the details. So having that chance to directly connect to a brand really helps their loyalty as well. Another brand doing it at the moment is Bird and Blend. So I'm a massive tea enthusiast. I love tea. It's a bit crazy, but all sorts of different teas, give them to me. I love them. So Bird and Blend is a kind of like an indie tea company. They're primarily in like Brighton, Bristol. There's quite a few in London, but they're spreading, and they're becoming more national as well now, which is really great. And they have a tea subscription box where you pay a set amount every month, and they give you 3 pouches of tea. But alongside that, you then get entry into a Facebook group, which is very similar to the Thought Park idea, but there's got a very fancy name. It's called the Community, which I love. I think it's the best thing ever. So yeah, they're doing it too. But whilst we're going through all of my things that I love, I'm also a massive Swiftie. And I think there's a lot that marketers can learn from Taylor Swift, which sounds really corny and cheesy, but I genuinely believe that she's one of the best marketers. She's the queen of marketing. She's incredible. Because not only has she built this incredible global brand where everyone wants to pay thousands and thousands of pounds to go and see her in concert, like people are dedicated and loyal. She has Taylor Nation, which is almost like an official fan group as well, and they're always posting. But if you were to take the notion of friendship bracelets, so many people are making these friendship bracelets now, but for everything, like it's not just Taylor Swift fans, and it's almost like seeped through into national culture and like international culture as well. Like so many people are just making these friendship bracelets, not even necessarily related to Taylor Swift. And I think she's just managed to gain this massive sense of community for Swifties and for other people as well in this friendship bracelet making craze. And it's literally all just stems from one lyric in one of her songs where she said, "Make the friendship bracelets." So everyone's like, Taylor Swift said, "Make the friendship bracelets." I will. And then they're throwing hundreds of thousands of these friendship bracelets everywhere. But yeah, I just think social community is a really strong, powerful tool to really help brands take it to that next level.
Yeah, I really, really love everything you said there. Like a lot of those brands I know about, but some I didn't. And something that you reminded me of is I know Bird and Blend, like this just shows that they do kind of social listening, but also really connect with the places they are. I know that each of their stores has a tea just for that location. Because I know in Wales, in Cardiff, we have a Welsh cake tea. Can't remember what the one that was in Nottingham, but that's another thing where they're trying to build that community and they're really trying to bed themselves with the people that they're communicating with, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Tim, I know that social media isn't really your thing. You're more of an SEO guy. You're more of a web design CRO guy. Well, that's how you strike me anyway. But I'd love to know like what your thoughts are on building community and any experiences you've had with it in the past.
Yeah, I'm sort of fascinated by this. There's an amazing book. I've been trying to remember the name. It's essentially about building a cult. And I think there's a lot of cult sort of building tools that these brands are using, because they're essentially, this is a way of giving people, I guess, an identity and a sense of belonging, isn't it? And it's attaching that belonging to a brand. So Taylor Swift fans aren't just people who like Taylor Swift, they are Swifties. and they give themselves a visible mark to say that I'm a member of this club. And if Ryanair replies to you on social media, you get that feels significant. You're going to tell people that, hey, Ryanair replied to me, because they bestow some of their sort of social currency on the people that they talk to. And I think all of this is just a super interesting way of using the sort of social wiring that we have in our heads from millions of years of evolution. But it's sort of attaching it to business outcomes, which I've always found absolutely fascinating. So I love all these examples, and it just makes me think. I remember reading about, I think it was Dan Kennedy was talking about, give your brand a language that you talk to your audience with, and then they can learn the language, they can learn some of this terminology, and that's another way of sort of giving them belonging. I think for a lot of companies, this type of thing maybe happens accidentally, but I sort of wanted to ask you, Danielle, because a lot of these brands like Ryanair or Duolingo or Taylor Swift, they actually have, I guess, an identity. And Gymshark posted something this week where I can't remember what their post was, but then they had all these brands sort of replying with a 1-word or 2-word answer. I can't just might remember it, but the reason that type of thing works is because Duolingo's personality, or Monster Energy's personality, or whatever, Starbucks personality. Danielle, when you're thinking about like Alton Towers or any of the other places that you've been at, how much of that is like a conscious decision? Do you think about, right, this is the personality that we want to communicate through our social posts, so that when people see those posts, they recognize it as Alton Towers? Or is this much more of a sort of an organic thing that just kind of happens naturally within the marketing team?
It's definitely something that we think about and that we try and strategize. So we have things like brand personality documents that break in different language that we would use. We've got the word fantastical, fantabulous, these types of words that we use. So we always ensure that the language is set to a certain personality. But then something that I've been working on here and at previous roles as well is having a personality per social channel, where you take that brand personality, but you adjust it depending. So the way that you present the brand on TikTok, for example, is very different to how you would present it on Facebook. And I think it's having that personality, overarching personality, for people to be able to recognize your brand, even though it is slightly different on different channels. But that comes down to not just language, it's also creative as well. So certain different techniques and tools that we would use, even like simple things like the type of text that we use, the fonts, but then also the way in which we have photography, different angles, but also like content creation for short form video and the way that's all positioned and different transitions that we use. We almost use a formula and make sure that it always hits the same marks. So it feels like a fresh, exciting new piece of content, but it also feels very Alton at the same time. And I think that's definitely something that I'd recommend for anyone, whether it's your own personal channel or whether it's a brand.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that.
Jess, we've talked about Duolingo before, and how Duolingo, Facebook, Duolingo, TikTok, it's almost like a different, I mean, yeah, there's like that owl thing involved in both, but other than that, pretty much like this is a different thing, right? I guess it's almost like the child and the adult version.
Yeah, it's like the owl on TikTok kind of feels like a little bit of a criminal. Like, I don't know how to describe them. Like, they're a bit feral.
It's like the middle child.
A bit like, yeah. They're kind of like, they just do what they want. And yeah, feral is the best way that I would describe it. Whereas within the app and within like PPC adverts, feels a little bit like a professional, a little bit pro, a little bit like I'm your language learning guru kind of thing. Whereas when I'm seeing that owl on TikTok, I'm like, there is no thoughts in your brain. There's no way you know multiple languages. Like, it's a very different vibe. But when I was like, oh, I want to start learning French again, there was no doubt in my mind that I would look at Duolingo. And there was like people being like, oh, what app are you supposed to use when you want to learn how to ask where the bathroom is rather than asking how to throw an egg out a window, because Duolingo just comes up with the most random sentences. And I was like, I genuinely don't know where I'd even start looking. Like, no other app in that space is really making that noise or has that kind of silly tone of voice that makes me feel like this is something I can just pick up for 5 minutes a day and get results. Whereas the other ones that are a bit more serious are making me feel like I need to be subscribing to a course and, you know, all these things. So yeah, I think it is very, like, very, very interesting for sure. Danielle, I guess this is like the last question for you, so we won't interrogate you too much. But I wanted to know, how do you sort of manage when people create their own online communities and spaces to sort of talk about your brand? How do you toe the line between wanting to get involved in that, but also wanting to give them the space to like be themselves and sort of have those conversations without you being like, hello, we're here too? It's almost like when you want kids to be able to kind of make their own connections without an adult watching over them type thing. Like, how do you manage that?
I fully get you. I think it's something, if I'm honest, that we're still like learning ourselves, and like especially myself, because yeah, we do have there's something called Alton Towers News and Discussions, there's a Merlin Annual Pass Holders group, there's all of these different groups that are community based but not run or managed by the resort. So many other brands have the same issues as well. But I think it's about turning it from an issue to an opportunity. And every time, like, I'm not going to lie, we're all in these groups, like you would be, it's about your brand, like you're interested. And it's about seeing what the conversation is, seeing what they're picking up as issues with your product, or seeing what they're picking up as really great elements of your product, and then taking that as a learning to improve your product from a positive note or a negative note, like whichever it is, and bolstering it and really using it as an opportunity. Something that we're working on at the moment is trying to integrate and make the guys that are running these channels and very heavily involved in them, make them aware that we're there to support them if they need it as well. So there's loads of different ways that we're doing this, but I think it's just important that they feel like they're prioritized and they're important to the brand as well.
Yeah, I really love that. Thank you. I love that, turning what could be a negative into a positive. And I think that's the huge element of social listening, isn't it? Understanding what people's pain points and issues actually are, and then using that to your advantage, but also to their benefit too. So that's really fab. Thank you so much, Danielle. That was a really, really great story. Now we're getting into my slightly silly story, but actually I think it has quite a good message, which is Decathlon's No Tent Left Behind campaign. So Decathlon is a big, like, outdoorsy brand in the UK. They sell tents, they sell, you know, hiking gear, anything to do with doing the outdoors, you go to Decathlon. And what they are running at the moment is, for those who don't know, we have a lot of festivals in the UK, and there's a massive, massive problem with people leaving their tents behind after festivals. There's a few reasons people may do this. It could just be because they're lazy. I know I've been to festivals and people are like, throwing litter as part of the experience. And I'm like, do you need help? What is wrong? But I think also people panic and they don't know how to put the tent away. It's one of those where, you know, it was really hard to put it up and now they don't know how to put it down. So Decathlon, being one of the main suppliers in this space, are doing a buyback scheme on specific eligible tents, which, as you can imagine, you buy them from Decathlon, but you return it before a certain date, which is basically the end of the festival season, and you'll get a gift card equal to the tent's price. So this is what you paid for it. You don't get like a half price. You get what you paid for the tent back on a Decathlon voucher. So I can imagine Decathlon, obviously, they're probably under fire a little bit for how much people are wasting these tents, but also they have competitors like Amazon, where people can next day delivery get a cheap tent, you know, for half the price or whatever. And so people are going to do that, and then they're going to waste them because they paid barely anything for it and they don't care. So Decathlon are like, well, how can we do something for the environment and also bring people back to us, get them in our stores or get them on our website, people who maybe wouldn't have come to our website before, get them to buy a tent with us, and then give us their money back in money that they can only spend with us, meaning they kind of create a repeat customer, which is really, really smart. But also, there's a digital PR element here too, because I heard about this on a bunch of different places, whether they were running adverts or whether news outlets were talking about it. Admittedly, the landing page URL is awful and they don't have a lot of people linking back to them. So I was like, maybe that's part of it. It's not really a very tidy link. But I also think people are probably, instead of linking to that page, they're linking back just to the Decathlon website to talk about it. But just based on how much I've seen, I can tell people have been talking about it, and that, you know, they are interested in this initiative. And it's one of those where there's not like a massive lesson here, but it kind of ties in a little bit actually to what Danielle was saying about social listening, understanding if you supply a problem, how you can start being the solution to the problem, but also benefit from it. Because if they were just like, yeah, we'll give you full money back for your tent, they're not going to get anything out of this other than maybe a bit of clout. Whereas if they're giving you a voucher for like 100 quid or 50 quid, then that's a real incentive for people to then go back to Decathlon and buy, like, even if they're not buying tents or outdoorsy stuff, they might be buying sportswear, or maybe they went to a festival and maybe there's some statistics out there of how many people who go to festivals are more likely to want to go camping more often or want to do more outdoorsy stuff. So they're like creating customers. And not only that, a lot of the people who do leave their tents behind or set them on fire or whatever they do at festivals I've been to tend to be a younger demographic who maybe aren't interested in doing this outdoorsy stuff, maybe. So they're almost like bringing them in and being like, hey, do you know you could actually do more outdoorsy stuff other than going to a field and setting a tent on fire? Come shop at Decathlon and we'll show you that you can do paddleboarding or canoeing or, you know, all this stuff. Like, yeah, I just thought, I feel like there's a story there. I feel like maybe I haven't explained it as succinctly as I have before, but I'd love to know if either of yourselves have any thoughts on this.
I think this is sick. I think this works in so many. I mean, the headline is, if you buy a tent from Decathlon, they're going to give you your money back if you take it back afterwards, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the terms and conditions, there's almost no chance you're getting your money back. So you have to return it with no damage. It has to be returned in a condition where the resale value is not significantly diminished. I mean, I've never taken a tent to a festival and it not being almost completely written off. So I think the chance of them actually having to refund anything is pretty low. Of course, they're giving you back the money in gift vouchers, which have a between 10 and 20% breakage, meaning 10 or 20% of them are never redeemed. Then, of course, you've got the overspend. When people shop with a gift voucher, they tend to spend significantly more. I think it's like 40% or something. And then, of course, you've got the fact that this is confined to one particular tent range. So you have to buy, and of course, because people in the back of their minds think they're going to be getting the money back, that makes them less price sensitive on the first purchase. And then, of course, you've got the fact that Decathlon is one of the best laid out retail experiences I've ever seen. You cannot go into Decathlon without buying a whole bunch of stuff that you had no prior intention of buying. Like all of a sudden, like you said, Jess, you're into paddleboarding and, oh, wow, look at this like crazy bike. I'm just going to get a bike. I haven't had a bike for a while, and oh, look at these sick helmets. And before you know it, like the whole day is written off and you just bought all this stuff. So, and all, you know, you get some links and you get some attention and you link up Decathlon with doing the right thing. I think it's a great thing. They've set it up in a way they basically can't lose, and we're all talking about them. I just love it. It's so clever. But I have to say, the landing page that you've linked, Jess, is crap. It's horrible.
I know, it's not good, is it? Yeah, it's not nice. I was like,
the text.
I was really hoping that there would be like a bit more to it. And like they've put all this effort in with this like no tent left behind and like all this, you know, that must have cost some money to get all these tents together and take this picture. So it feels like, you know, even this line that says view tents here is not even hyperlinked properly. Like I only knew it was a link because I could click on it, but I mean, it links through, but there's no indication that that's a link. So it
take up half the page as well.
Yeah, it's not the most inspiring ever, which makes me really surprised because they could do a lot more with this. So I don't know if this is just their gentle, let's see if anybody actually does this, and then maybe next year they'll make it better and they'll improve it. But it's there's a lot that could be done with this for sure, and I feel like they've maybe slightly dropped the ball, but at the same time, nobody else is doing this. They're the only company that's doing this, the only company that I'm hearing about that's doing this. So maybe there's the one of these where they're like, we don't have to put the effort in because it's just us, and then next year Amazon or someone will, or Go Outdoors will start doing the same campaign and do a better landing page, and Goodbye, Decathlon.
They've got cool branding for it. They've got Joe Wiley involved. You two are probably too young to remember Joe Wiley.
I know Joe Wiley.
Yeah.
This reminds me of like one of those campaigns where the creative team have came up with an amazing idea and then they've passed it to legal and legal's like, oh, terms and conditions. And then they've given the whole thing to development and development's like, well, we've got no time to do this. So I'm just going to knock you up something quickly. I'm not even going to bother formatting the URL so people could ever use it. And like the execution's fallen a bit flat. But like you say, full marks for effort. This is such a great idea. It's no risk, I think, because they've so tightly packaged the terms and conditions that I can't see this not paying off for them. Amazing.
Yeah, it's very, very cool.
Not to be cynical about it.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. Danielle, my first festival was actually Alton Towers Live. Yeah. That's not camping or anything, but yeah, I got very, very sunburnt. Me and my sister were quite small. We had a great time. So I need to choose a top pick story for this week. Tim, are any of them reaching out to you? I kind of feel like Danielle's story is kind of reaching out to me today.
Totally agree. This is something that I think so few marketers spend any time thinking about, how to not just build like repeat custom, but actually how to collect the people that are most passionate about their brands and give them a place to play and communicate with each other. That I think we absolutely need to cover this. It's such a great shout, Danielle.
Yeah. It's really, really good. Thank you so much for bringing it. I would say in terms of the tasks that I would think of for marketing managers is just look at the way you're interacting on social media. Are you kind of a set and forget kind of brand, even though you get a lot of comments in with people asking questions? Are you answering them within like the first 15 minutes to an hour of them going live? Are you engaging? Are you answering these questions? And just make sure that you're there, you're present. You're not just like a billboard. Make sure you're not treating social media like a billboard. You're treating it like you're stood in front of the billboard being like, any questions? Do you need any help with this? Do you need anything? Do you want to know anything? I think just review how you're handling social and look at the spaces that your audience are hanging out and making their own communities and figure out if you could maybe take that community and do it better. But also if you can, like Danielle said, connect with the owners of those groups and say, love what you're doing here. Is there anything we can do to help you? Because they've already got that audience. They've got that captive audience in a little Facebook group that you can then kind of, I don't want to say take advantage of, but you can support them. Tim, what would your tasks be for business owners or just any pointers you have for business owners based on this story?
I think a lot of this will feel quite risky to business owners, especially if they aren't the social natives that we're talking about appealing to. But I think, if you've got people like Danielle on your team who are passionate about building these communities and know how to do it in a brand safe way where you don't end up with, the spiraling group of hate that's just trying to tear you down and you've got no visibility on it at all, then you just trust it and run with it. And I think it's the sort of thing that won't come naturally to a lot of business owners. But as Danielle has shown, it really, when you get it right, it can be an amazing source of customer advocacy.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I say I've been in like Alton Towers Facebook groups for like 10 years, people get in there for life. They're very, very committed. So if you create that space, people will stay. If you, make sure they're getting what they need from it, getting their questions answered, people will stay. It's like you get long-term benefits from it for sure. Well, thank you both so much for your stories, and thank you, Tim, for the insights for business owners. Now it's our time to grill Danielle a little bit. We're going to ask you a few little questions, Danielle. You don't need to give us long answers, maybe like a minute, just so we can, anybody who's like, just wants to get some snippets and learn a little bit about you or just learn some great marketing insights can get them. So the first question is, if you had just 1 hour to improve your marketing, what would you work on?
So I would either build up a bank of content that you can use for all channels, multi-channels, so not just social, but you can use it on your website, you can use it for out of home, you can use it for PR, a little bit of everything, and have a core bank where anyone in the team, marketing, across the business really, can then go in, find an image, use it, find a video, use it, find a piece of copy, use it, to really ensure that brand consistency. So I'd spend an hour trying to formulate those together, package it up, or I would focus on brand personality and communicate that to the business and how it's expected for everybody to be talking and communicating.
I love that. Fantastic. What would you do with an infinite marketing budget?
Oh, I'm a massive advocate of content creators and influencers. So I would probably put a lot of time and effort into big press events, media events, content creator events, get loads of content creators in, have them produce loads of content that you can use on your social channels and across other marketing platforms as well. Because I've essentially done the job for you by that point.
Love that. Love that. Which marketing skill would you recommend 18-year-old Danielle works on, and why? Or maybe you can go even younger if you like, considering at 14 you're like, I want to work in marketing. Maybe you would have specialized differently. Yeah.
So I didn't really understand when I was younger the importance of copywriting and how you can use language to persuade audiences or to communicate a certain aspect. So I'd definitely say copywriting. Long form, short form, the whole shebang.
Yeah, it's definitely key for sure. What are you most excited about in marketing right now?
Ooh, I think the increase in short form video content and how it's being used and multi-purposed, again, across channels. It's native and it's come from social, and you see it very often on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, that kind of thing. But it's now filtering through as well into things like you see it on paid ads, you see it on display ads, you see it on out of home, you're seeing it everywhere now. And I think, yeah, short form video content is really exciting.
Absolutely. And finally, Danielle, who should we invite to be our next podcast guest?
So a very good friend of mine, Katie McDonald, she's a amazing SEO and content specialist. She's worked in agencies for I think most of her career, and she's smashing it out of the park at the moment. She's got some really insightful knowledge. That would be really great.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Danielle. You had some really fantastic insights, and it was really great to just hear a little bit about your industry and chat a little bit about social media. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this week. Don't forget that you can head to our website and get a free website and marketing review at exposureninja.com/review. Forgot to mention that earlier because I've just been enthralled by all the conversations we've been having today. But don't forget you can do that. And also you can check out our podcast more on our YouTube channel or on our website. Just head to YouTube and type in Exposure Ninja Podcast and we will come up. We've got over 300 episodes of podcast just with Tim, a few episodes of this podcast, and just a load of great stuff. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye.